Well, welcome back to the Anti-War Room. This is Tom Andrews, National Director of Win Without War, along with Erik Lever of the Institute for Policy Studies. Erik, thanks for joining us today.
Morning.
Well, it's raining here in Washington. The Democratic House caucus is off on a retreat talking about the Iraq War, the economy, and other subjects, Erik. The President signed the Defense Authorization Bill finally this week, but he signed it with some provisions. And, I guess, once again, the President doesn't want to get little, nasty things in the way like federal law from getting in the way of what he wants to do. And he had one of these famous signing statements. For those of you who don't know, a signing statement is what the President will traditionally do, indicating how he's going to implement a new federal law that he is signing. But in the case of George W. Bush, he actually is saying which parts of the law he's going to comply with and which parts of the law he's not going to comply with because, of course, he's George W. Bush. So in this particular case, Erik, there were a couple of very interesting provisions in the bill. One that called for that no money in the bill could go toward permanent military bases in Iraq. And also there was a provision that was opposed to war profiteering, both of which the President had problems with. What exactly did the President do, and why?
Well, on the issue of permanent bases and control of Iraqi oil, he's singled this out, which is actually interesting because he hadn't bothered to single that out in any of the other previous times that Congress has passed this legislation, which has been at least 3 times. So now that he's on the verge of signing an agreement or wanting to sign an agreement for a permanent military presence inside of Iraq with Maliki, he's decided to put some weight on it, draw some national attention to it. So I think it is, really important not only because it's signaling a change in policy. Here we are, the President's wanting to say that, maybe we will be there for 10 years, 100 years. Maybe he's setting the stage for McCain to be there for 1,000 years, as I think McCain has joked about. So, but it's also very dangerous because, it's going directly against the will of the Congress and the law of the land. And it's the same way in the provision talking about the war profiteers, where a bipartisan commission was, established in this legislation. I mean, it wasn't just railroading a bunch of, Democrats. It was going to be a 9-person commission. The President was going to get to appoint people to really take a look at, what have been the abuses underneath, this administration with contractors. But yet, the President is feeling some sort of allegiance to these folks, and many of them are actually next week going to be meeting with people in the Senate. In the White House, the Pentagon, and the State Department, to talk about how they're going to continue their war profiteering operations underneath this administration.
So these contractors, mercenaries, many call them, that the United States is contracting with for so-called security services, obviously there's been a lot of controversy about the fact that they have been going in and killing innocent Iraqi people, and there's been investigations going on about their abuse of power and the fact that they're not subject to any law, really, and very minimal oversight up to this point, particularly from the State Department. And, of course, the other problem is the billions of dollars, allegedly, that has been lost to these contractors. And this commission was going to be designed to get to the root of this, and, of course, this is what the President is objecting to.
Yeah, and part of the reason why he's objecting to it is because in the principle of agreement that he signed in November with Maliki, which was going to sort of set the negotiating table for the future, contractors were going to be immune once again. So, it's not just a statement saying, we're going to protect the profits of them, but that we want them to be in Iraq for as long as the U.S. troop presence is there. So,
and of course, this all comes on the eve of the negotiations going on right now with the Maliki government and the Bush administration to establish a more long-term presence for the United States. Congress is going to try to do something about that, and hopefully they will. Any predictions?
Well, on the national stage, we had Hillary Clinton inviting Barack Obama to join her in legislative efforts, saying that any agreement that's entered into by the Bush administration and the Maliki government be a treaty, that Congress would actually, have to deal with this issue. And I think that that's extremely important because the draft principles talks about mutual assured security arrangements, which would mean that if Iraq was attacked by an outside country, that we would go to their defense, thereby committing U.S. troops to get further involved in the conflict that's there. So the whole agreement is. It's really dangerous.
So we have you mentioned the Democrats and, of course, Senator McCain. It looks like that the battle for the presidency is becoming clearer and clearer, and the difference between Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton on the Democratic side versus John McCain or Mitt Romney on the Republican side or Mike Huckabee are just, there's a huge chasm, and it looks as if Senator McCain is going to really push the point on this Iraq war and campaign on the basis of it. So it looks like we might have the clearest choice possible between Democrats and Republican presidential candidates when it comes to the war in Iraq and the Bush Doctrine in general.
Yeah, I think it's going to be an easy decision for voters to make in November because you have, Clinton and Obama voted the same way on Iraq 20 out of 21 times last year, and the only time that they didn't was because, Barack was off campaigning. So very clearly, a commitment to, draw down troops, transition the mission, and really start to change our Middle East policy versus McCain, who wants to be able to continue to commit our troops there for as long as it takes, and to follow what the president has said this week, where he's going to draw down troops from the pre-surge levels, but isn't going to go any further than that.
Right. So we could have more troops in Iraq in November of 2008 than we had in November of 2006. And meanwhile, on this February 1st, 65 people died in Baghdad today. A double suicide bombing occurred. We learned yesterday from the Washington Post that suicides for U.S. military is up by a significant margin, 20% over just the past year. And of course, cities like Mosul and the northern part of Iraq, violence not only is not declining, but is actually on the upswing.
Yeah, and the American soldiers' casualty rate in January was back up to nearly 40 soldiers that were killed. So the temporary quelling of violence that we saw towards the end of 2007 is now posed to raise much higher, even with the U.S. higher troop levels that are there right now.
So no progress whatsoever with respect to political reconciliation, which was the whole point of the surge. And now even the stability that was claimed that the surge was creating is beginning to unravel. In the few minutes we have left, Erik, we have the Democrats in a retreat, so to speak. Some would say literally and figuratively. But we have now the new session coming up. We have a supplemental appropriation. That is, the president's out of money. He's going to have to find more money in the next couple of months for Iraq. It could be up to $100 billion or so. And then there's the regular appropriations process for the 2009 budget, which will start on October 1st. Will we see confrontations over the Iraq war coming up in the next few months? We've got the anniversary of the invasion of Iraq coming up in March. What can we be expecting, and what should we be doing, Erik, in the next few weeks leading up to this confrontation in the Congress?
Well, I think that we're going to see lots of individual bills that come out calling for withdrawal. We have Lee and Woolsey's bill that is going to be introduced, an extension of what they had put forth in previous years, 508, calling for a timetable for troop withdrawal and setting funding limits to that sort of thing. So I think we're going to see. Webb has said his language on war profiteering, that he's going to continue to move ahead with that.
Senator Webb in the Senate, yeah.
So we're going to, I think, continue to see a lot of individual battles. The big question, and I think, what's so important for the Democrats as they retreat right now, is to figure out what's the overall strategy for the year. And we've heard some people say they were interested in working on the spending bills. But yet then we have, Steny Hoyer saying that they're not going to work on the spending bills. So, I think the lesson that needed to be learned from last year was that there was a lack of clear strategy, that you had a lot of individual players, and what it resulted in was not much.
And even within leadership, you're hearing on the one hand Nancy Pelosi wanting to push the envelope. On the other hand, coming out of the retreat that they're on now, the majority leader, Steny Hoyer, saying, well, we don't want to have battles over funding and the Iraq war. A lot of sorting out to be done, and we're going to sort more of that out next week as the House comes back in a session with the Senate. I'm Tom Andrews. Thanks for joining us. We'll be back next week with a more of an update here with Erik Lever with the Institute for Policy Studies. See you next week on the Anti-War Room.